My name is Myrtle Lawson, 38, and I never thought my own sister would cut me from the most important celebration of her life. We can't have embarrassing relatives there, Amanda told our family, convincing everyone to say I was sick if anyone asked. Little did she know that her future father-in-law, Richard Keller, was not only my employee but up for his quarterly performance review next week. I smiled quietly when he called to confirm our meeting, wondering if he knew how his son's promotion was about to disappear overnight. Before I dive in, where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe if you've ever had family underestimate you. I should probably start by explaining how I ended up as the embarrassing sister, despite being the successful one in the family. 15 years ago, I was just another college graduate with a business degree and mountains of student debt. Unlike many of my peers who took gap years or jumped between entry-level positions, I had a crystal-clear plan. While my classmates partied on weekends, I worked 60-hour weeks at a small logistics company, learning every aspect of operations management. By 28, I had climbed to regional manager at Meridian Enterprises, one of the top firms in the country. Now, at 38, I'm vice president of operations, overseeing 300 employees and managing a budget larger than what most small towns operate on. The corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown wasn't handed to me. I earned every square inch through relentless hard work and strategic decision-making. My sister Amanda is 8 years younger than me. While I was busy building my career, she was the baby of the family, coddled and protected. Our parents, John and Marie, owned a modest hardware store that provided a comfortable middle-class life, but nothing extravagant. They poured every spare dollar into Amanda's dance lessons, cheerleading camps, and later, her social science degree that she's never actually used. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. But Amanda has always been preoccupied with appearances and social standing in a way that makes me uncomfortable. Where I value directness and efficiency, Amanda excels at the delicate dance of social niceties. She has a talent for befriending people with influence or money, a skill that has served her well in her career as an event coordinator for wealthy clients. The first major incident I can recall that highlighted our differences was at my cousin Tara's wedding 8 years ago. I had just received a major promotion and was sharing my excitement with some relatives during the reception. Amanda pulled me aside, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. "Do you have to talk about spreadsheets and profit margins at a wedding?" she hissed. "Nobody cares about your boring job. You're making everyone uncomfortable." I was stunned. "I thought family would be happy about my success," I replied. "It comes across as bragging," she said. "Plus, you're wearing a pantsuit to a formal wedding. It's embarrassing." That was the first time I heard that word embarrassing applied to me by my own sister. Then there was the Christmas dinner 3 years ago, when Amanda's college friends were invited. I made the apparently unforgivable mistake of discussing politics with Amanda's friend's husband, not realizing he held completely opposite views. The debate was spirited but respectful from my perspective. Later, Amanda accused me of creating tension and showing off my knowledge. "Not everyone needs to hear your opinions on everything," she snapped when we were alone in the kitchen. "It was just a conversation," I defended myself. "It's always just a conversation with you, but somehow you end up making people uncomfortable," she replied. "Can't you just talk about normal things like everyone else?" Our parents have always mediated these conflicts in a predictable way. "Myrtle, you know how sensitive Amanda is," or "Myrtle, couldn't you just go along with things for once?" They love us both. But Amanda's tears have always been more persuasive than my logical arguments. So when Amanda announced her engagement to Bradley Keller 6 months ago, I was genuinely happy for her despite our differences. Bradley comes from a wealthy family with connections to several Fortune 500 companies. His father is an executive somewhere, his mother sits on charity boards, and the family has a vacation home in the Hamptons. In other words, exactly the kind of social elevation Amanda has always dreamed of. "He's amazing, Myrtle," she gushed during our monthly sister lunch. "You should see their family home. And his parents are so accomplished." I smiled genuinely. "I'm happy you found someone who makes you happy. And successful," she added quickly. "Don't forget successful. His father is high up in some big corporation." I nodded, asking appropriate questions about wedding plans and engagement rings. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, during a routine departmental meeting, that I made the connection that would change everything. "The newest reports from Richard Keller's team show promising results," my assistant mentioned, sliding a folder across my desk. Richard Keller. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. It wasn't until I opened the file and saw his photo that it clicked. I had seen this man in Amanda's Instagram posts, standing next to Bradley in family photos. Richard Keller was my sister's future father-in-law and, as it happened, a mid-level manager in my department who had recently applied for a senior position. The coincidence seemed almost comical at first. What were the odds that my future brother-in-law's father would work under me? I considered mentioning it to Richard immediately, but decided to wait for the right moment, perhaps at the engagement party, which Amanda had been planning obsessively for weeks. The save-the-date card was already on my refrigerator. Little did I know that by the time that party rolled around, my name would be conspicuously absent from the guest list, setting in motion a chain of events that would test my professional ethics and personal boundaries in ways I never anticipated. The save-the-date card arrived in early April, an elegant cream-colored square with silver embossing announcing the engagement celebration of Amanda Marie Lawson and Bradley James Keller. The party was scheduled for June 15th at the Belvedere, one of the most exclusive venues in the city. I immediately marked my calendar and called Amanda to congratulate her on securing such an impressive location. "It's all thanks to Bradley's family connections," Amanda said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "The waiting list is usually 18 months, but his mother knows the owner." "That's wonderful," I replied. "Do you need any help with the planning or costs? I'd be happy to contribute." There was a slight pause. No, the Kellers are covering everything," they insisted. Over the next few weeks, Amanda's behavior grew increasingly strange whenever the engagement party came up. During our mother's birthday dinner in May, I asked about dress code expectations. "Oh, it's black tie," Amanda said quickly, then immediately changed the subject to her latest venue visits for the actual wedding. When I tried again later that evening to inquire about parking arrangements at the Belvedere, she became visibly uncomfortable. "I'll text you all the details later," she said, then excused herself to help our father with the dessert plates. The text never came. A week later, I called Amanda directly to ask if everything was all right with the party planning. "Actually, Myrtle," she began, her voice taking on that high-pitched quality it gets when she's nervous, "there's been a slight change of plans. The Kellers revised the guest list, and the Belvedere has strict capacity limits." "Okay," I said slowly. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we've had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list," she continued. "Really difficult decisions. The venue can only accommodate 150 people, and Bradley's family alone accounts for nearly 100 of those spots." An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. "Amanda, are you disinviting me from your engagement party?" "No. Well, not exactly," she stammered. "It's just a space issue. I'd add you if I could, but Bradley's parents have invited so many important business associates and friends. People who could really help Bradley's career, you know?" "I see," I said, my voice cooling several degrees. "And your own sister doesn't make the cut." "Please don't make this harder than it already is," Amanda pleaded. "It's just one party. You'll be at the wedding, of course." I offered a solution that seemed obvious. "If it's just about capacity, I'm happy to help cover the cost of a larger venue. My bonus this quarter was substantial, and I'd love to put it toward making your celebration special." Her response was telling. "That's really generous, but no. The Belvedere is perfect, and the Kellers have already put down the deposit." After an awkward pause, she added, "Besides, you wouldn't enjoy it anyway. It's going to be all small talk and social networking, not really your scene." I ended the call shortly after, feeling both hurt and confused. Something wasn't adding up, but I couldn't quite figure out what. The answer came 3 days later when I stopped by our parents' house to drop off some gardening supplies my mother had requested. I let myself in through the side door as usual, calling out as I entered. No one responded, but I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. As I approached, I caught fragments of a conversation that made me freeze in the hallway. "I just don't know what to tell people when they ask why she's not there," my mother was saying. "Just say she's sick or had a work emergency," Amanda's voice replied. "Something believable." "But won't people find it strange that your own sister isn't at your engagement party?" my father asked. "Dad, I've explained this a dozen times," Amanda said, exasperation clear in her voice. "We can't have embarrassing relatives there. The Kellers are connected to everyone who matters in this city. Bradley's future depends on making the right impression." My mother sighed. "I understand that, sweetie. But Myrtle is your sister, and she's not embarrassing, she's just direct." "Direct? Mom, she corrects people's grammar in casual conversation. She talks about profit margins at dinner parties. Last Christmas, she got into that horrible argument with Bradley's cousin about tax policy. I can't risk her saying something inappropriate to Bradley's father's colleagues." "So what do we tell people?" my father asked again. Like I said, tell them she's sick. Or away on business. Something that won't raise questions. Everyone just needs to stick to the same story. There was a pause, and then my mother's resigned voice. All right, if that's what you need us to do. I must have made some involuntary sound because the kitchen suddenly went silent. Then I heard chairs scraping against the floor. Myrtle? My mother appeared in the hallway, face pale. How long have you been standing there? I couldn't even look at her. My eyes were fixed on Amanda, who had followed behind our mother, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. Long enough, I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Long enough to hear that I'm the embarrassing relative who needs to be hidden away. Myrtle, that's not what I meant. Amanda started. Really? Because we can't have embarrassing relatives, there seems pretty clear to me. I quoted her exact words back. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Amanda said, tears forming. Bradley's family is so important, and everything needs to be perfect. And I'm imperfect. An embarrassment. Someone who needs to be erased with a convenient lie, I said. The hurt was quickly crystallizing into anger. Were you ever going to tell me the truth? Or was I just supposed to believe your capacity excuse? I was trying to spare your feelings, she insisted. By lying to me? By getting our parents to lie too. I looked at my mother and father, who had the decency to look ashamed. And you both agreed to this? My father stepped forward. Myrtle, we just want what's best for both our girls. Amanda has a lot riding on this relationship. And what about my feelings? Do they matter at all in this family? I asked, looking at each of them in turn. No one had a good answer. After a moment of heavy silence, I placed the gardening supplies on the hall table and walked out without another word. The drive home was a blur of tears and disbelief, not just at Amanda's betrayal, but at my parents' willingness to go along with it. What hurt most wasn't being excluded from a party, it was knowing that my own family saw me as a liability rather than someone to be proud of. All my accomplishments, all my hard work, meant nothing compared to Amanda's desperate need to impress people with money and status. What none of them knew, of course, was that one of those important people Amanda was so eager to impress Bradley's father, Richard Keller, was actually my employee. And not just any employee, but one whose career advancement now rested largely in my hands. The Monday after discovering I'd been branded the embarrassing relative, I threw myself into work with even more intensity than usual. My assistant Jackson noticed my mood immediately. Rough weekend? He asked, placing my usual morning coffee on my desk. Family drama, I replied curtly. Nothing I can't handle. What's on the agenda today? Jackson ran through the day's meetings, ending with, and Richard Keller is scheduled for his preliminary quarterly review discussion at 2. I nodded, my mind immediately shifting to the professional implications of my personal situation. Richard Keller had been with the company for nearly 8 years, working his way up from analyst to project manager to his current role as departmental manager. His performance had always been solid, if not spectacular, reliable, but rarely innovative. 3 months ago, Richard had applied for the senior operations director position that had opened when Linda Foreman retired. It was a significant step up, with a 40% salary increase, expanded responsibilities, and a team of 5 managers reporting to the role. The position also included equity options and an annual bonus structure tied to department performance. In other words, exactly the kind of promotion that could substantially elevate a family's financial status. At 2 o'clock sharp, Richard knocked on my office door, his usual confident smile in place. "Afternoon, Myrtle," he said as he took a seat across from my desk. Richard was always impeccably dressed in custom suits that subtly communicated his aspirations. Today was no exception, charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe, paired with an expensive-looking tie. "Thanks for coming in, Richard," I replied professionally. "As you know, quarterly reviews are next week, but I wanted to touch base beforehand since you've also applied for the senior director position." "I appreciate that," he said, leaning forward slightly. "I'm feeling good about both. My team has exceeded our efficiency targets 2 quarters in a row now." "Yes, the numbers look promising," I acknowledged, "though I do have some questions about the implementation timeline for the new inventory system." Richard waved a hand dismissively. "Minor delays. You know how IT can be with these rollouts. Nothing to worry about." This was typical Richard, confident to the point of dismissing potential concerns. I made a note to look more closely at those minor delays later. "How are things otherwise?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Any major life updates I should know about?" His face brightened immediately. "Actually, yes. My son just got engaged a few months back, planning a big party for them in June. The girl comes from a good family, Not quite at our level socially, but decent people from what I hear. I kept my expression neutral despite the internal flinch at his description of my family. Congratulations! That must be exciting for your family. Bradley, that's my son. He's on track for a promotion at his firm too, Richard continued, clearly eager to share. Between that and this senior director position, the Keller family is moving up in the world. He chuckled. Wedding's gonna cost me a fortune, but that's what fathers do, right? Indeed, I murmured, wondering if he knew the bride's family was expected to traditionally cover wedding costs, another example of the Keller's entitlement. The engagement party is really the kickoff to a year of celebrations, he continued. We've invited all the right people. My wife has been working with the bride on the guest list to make sure it's appropriate. There it was, a clear indication that Richard was just as involved in curating the perfect guest list as Amanda had implied. Appropriate? I echoed, unable to resist probing. You know how it is, Richard said with a conspiratorial smile. Some families have members who don't quite fit the social setting. My wife is helping the bride navigate that delicate situation. That must be challenging, I said carefully, balancing family obligations with social aspirations. Between us, Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice. There's a sister who apparently lacks certain social graces. The bride is figuring out how to handle that situation tactfully. It took every ounce of professionalism I'd cultivated over 15 years not to reveal my identity right then. Instead, I simply nodded and redirected the conversation back to work matters. As Richard left my office, I sat back in my chair, processing the bizarre reality I now found myself in. Richard had no idea he had just complained about his future daughter-in-law's socially ungraceful sister to that very same person who also happened to hold significant influence over his career advancement. The ethical implications weren't lost on me. I immediately pulled up the company handbook and reviewed our conflict of interest policies. There was nothing explicitly prohibiting me from participating in Richard's review process, given our soon-to-be family connection, but the situation certainly inhabited a gray area. That evening, I called my closest friend Diana, who had been my roommate in college and now worked as an ethics consultant for major corporations. You're not going to believe this, I told her, before explaining the entire situation. Diana listened without interrupting, then whistled low when I finished. That's a soap opera-level coincidence, she said. What are you thinking of doing? I don't know, I admitted. Professionally, I need to evaluate him based solely on his work performance. Personally, I want to see the look on his and Amanda's faces when they realize who I am. The professional path is clear, Diana advised. Document everything. Be transparent about the connection once it becomes relevant, and consider recusing yourself from final decisions if necessary. The personal path is trickier. What do you actually want out of this situation, Myrtle? It was a good question, one I couldn't immediately answer. Did I want revenge? Justice? Recognition? Or simply respect from my own family? I need time to think, I told Diana. The formal review isn't until next week. Just don't do anything that compromises your professional integrity, she cautioned. Your career isn't worth sacrificing for family drama, no matter how justified your feelings are. Over the next few days, Richard became increasingly name-droppy about the upcoming engagement celebration, mentioning important guests and how this connection to Amanda's family would be beneficial for everyone involved. Each comment revealed how little he actually knew about me or my family, despite the countless personal details Amanda had surely shared with Bradley. On Friday afternoon, Richard called to confirm our Monday review meeting. Looking forward to it, he said cheerfully. Bradley and I were just talking about how this promotion would be perfect timing with all the wedding expenses coming up. Nothing like a salary bump right when you need it. We'll be evaluating your performance on its own merits, I reminded him professionally. Of course, he backpedaled slightly. I just meant it would be a nice coincidence. By the way, the engagement party is really coming together beautifully. Shame about the bride's sister not being able to make it. Apparently she's ill or something. I gripped my phone tighter. Is that so? Yes. Some last-minute thing. Probably for the best, from what I hear, he added with a light laugh. Anyway, see you Monday. As I hung up, I realized I had a decision to make. The engagement party was tomorrow, and Richard's review was Monday. Whatever I decided would impact not just Richard's career, but my relationship with my sister and potentially my own professional reputation. I opened my laptop and began carefully reviewing Richard's performance data, determined to ensure that whatever happened next would be based on facts, not feelings, no matter how tempting it might be to let personal considerations influence my judgment. Saturday morning, I woke up to a flurry of notifications on my phone. Amanda had been posting Instagram stories throughout the night, close-up shots of hand-calligraphed place cards, the elaborate floral arrangements being delivered to the Belvedere, her freshly done manicure holding up a champagne flute during the pre-party salon session with Bradley's mother and sisters. Each image was like a tiny paper cut to my heart. This wasn't just any party, this was my only sister's engagement celebration, a milestone family event that I'd been deliberately excluded from because I might embarrass her. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" The pretense made me sick. I waited an hour before responding. "Just fine, Mom. Working." Her reply came quickly. "That's good to hear. Take it easy today." The charade was so transparent it would have been laughable if it wasn't so painful. Everyone was committed to the story that I was ill, too sick to attend my sister's engagement party, rather than admit the truth that I had been deemed socially unacceptable by my own family. By midday, my father had texted too. "Checking in on you, kiddo. Need anything?" I didn't respond. What could I say? That I needed parents who wouldn't lie about me, a sister who wasn't ashamed of me. There was no text message that could fix this situation. Instead of wallowing, I made a decision to be productive. I spread Richard Keller's performance reports across my dining room table and began a thorough analysis of his work over the past year. If I was going to conduct his review on Monday with complete professionalism, I needed to be certain of the fact. What I found was interesting. While Richard's team had indeed exceeded their efficiency targets for 2 quarters, as he'd proudly pointed out, deeper analysis revealed some concerning patterns. The inventory system implementation he'd dismissed as having minor delays was actually 3 months behind schedule and 20% over budget. His department had the highest turnover rate in the division, particularly among female employees, and his own reports often took credit for innovations that had clearly originated from team members below him. None of these issues were firing offenses, but they certainly didn't paint the picture of an executive ready for senior leadership. I made detailed notes, citing specific examples and data points that couldn't be dismissed as subjective or personally motivated. Around 4 o'clock, when the engagement party would be starting, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Diana standing there, holding a bottle of expensive Cabernet and a takeout bag from my favorite Thai restaurant. "I figured you could use some company," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "How did you know?" I asked, genuinely touched. "Because I know you," she replied, heading straight for my kitchen to uncork the wine. "And I know you're probably sitting here alone pretending it doesn't hurt while obsessing over work to distract yourself." She wasn't wrong. As we settled on my couch with pad thai and wine, Diana nodded toward the performance reports still spread across my dining table. "Making sure you're being fair?" she asked. "Trying to," I admitted, "though it's hard when I keep getting updates about a party I'm supposedly too sick to attend." On cue, my phone lit up with another Instagram notification. Amanda had posted a group photo with the caption, "Surrounded by all our favorite people as we celebrate our engagement. Number, Keller Lawson engagement. Number, blessed by the best. All our favorite people." The phrase stung. "You know what the worst part is?" I said to Diana. "I would have behaved perfectly fine at that party. I know how to act in professional settings, I do it every day. I run meetings with CEOs and board members. I speak at industry conferences. But somehow my family still sees me as this socially awkward liability." "That's often how families work," Diana said gently. "They freeze our identities at some point in time and never update their perception, no matter how much we grow or change." As the evening progressed, more photos appeared online. Amanda in her designer dress, Bradley looking polished in his tuxedo, both sets of parents smiling proudly. Richard Keller featured prominently in many shots, arm around important-looking guests, clearly in his element as the father of the groom-to-be. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Everything worked out perfectly. Everyone who matters was here. You didn't miss anything that would have interested you anyway." The dismissive tone of the message, coupled with the implication that I wouldn't have belonged among everyone who matters, crystallized something for me. This wasn't just about one party. This was about a lifetime of being made to feel less than by the people who should have valued me most. Diana noticed my expression change as I read the text. "What are you thinking right now?" she asked cautiously. "I'm thinking that I've spent years trying to earn my family's respect through achievement, believing that if I was successful enough they'd finally see my worth," I said slowly. "But that's never going to happen, is it?" Diana took my hand. "Maybe not in the way you want, but that doesn't diminish your actual worth. Monday's meeting with Richard is going to be interesting, I murmured. Remember what matters to you, Diana said. Your professional reputation, your integrity. Don't sacrifice those things for momentary satisfaction. She was right, of course. As hurt and angry as I felt, I couldn't let those emotions drive my professional decisions. Richard's review needed to be based on his actual performance, not my personal feelings about his family's treatment of me. But that didn't mean I couldn't finally reveal the truth about who I was. It was time for the Kellers and my own family to realize they had severely underestimated Myrtle Lawson. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I dressed with particular care, choosing my most impressive power suit, a tailored charcoal gray ensemble that projected authority without trying too hard. My makeup was flawless, my hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. If I was going to reveal my identity to Richard Keller, I wanted to look every inch the successful executive his son's fiancé was apparently embarrassed to claim as a sister. I arrived at the office 30 minutes early to center myself and review my notes one final time. Jackson brought in my coffee and reminded me of the day's schedule. Richard Keller's review is at 10, he said, and the Senior Leadership Committee wants your recommendation on his director application by end of day. Thank you, Jackson. Hold all my calls during the Keller meeting, please. At precisely 10 o'clock, Richard knocked on my office door, entering with the confident stride of a man who expected good news. Morning, Myrtle, he said cheerfully, taking a seat across from me. Beautiful day, isn't it? Indeed, I replied professionally. How was your weekend? His face lit up immediately. Absolutely fantastic. My son's engagement party was Saturday night at the Belvedere. Everything was perfect, just the right people, excellent connections made. Bradley and Amanda were the golden couple. I kept my expression neutral. That sounds lovely. The Belvedere is an excellent venue. The best, Richard agreed enthusiastically. Exclusivity is key for these kinds of events. My wife and I helped Amanda, that's my future daughter-in-law, ensure the guest list was appropriate. He gave a knowing smile, as if we shared some understanding about the importance of social gatekeeping. I'm sure great care went into those decisions, I said evenly. Absolutely. There was some drama with Amanda's sister. Apparently she was too ill to attend. Between us, he lowered his voice conspiratorially. I think there might be more to that story. My son mentioned something about her being a bit difficult in social situations. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? You know how families can be, Richard continued, completely oblivious. There's always one relative who doesn't quite fit the mold. Shame, really, but sometimes it's best for everyone, if certain personalities aren't in the mix at important functions. He pulled out his phone. Would you like to see some photos from the party? The florist outdid herself. I'd love to, I said, my heart racing slightly as he scrolled through images I had already seen on social media. That's my son Bradley and Amanda, he said proudly, showing me a photo of the happy couple. And here we are with Amanda's parents, nice enough people, though not quite in our social circle normally. I studied the image of my own parents, smiling awkwardly beside the Kellers, knowing they were actively participating in a lie about their other daughter at that very moment. And where was Amanda's sister during all this? I asked innocently. Richard waved a hand dismissively. Homesick, apparently. Though, from what I gather, she's some kind of workaholic corporate type. Probably for the best she couldn't make it. Those types tend to dominate conversations with business talk. Not really appropriate for a celebration. The irony was almost too perfect. I took a deep breath. Richard, before we begin your formal review, there's something I need to disclose, I said, my voice steady. He looked up from his phone, curiosity crossing his features. Oh? The Amanda you're describing, your son's fiancée, is Amanda Lawson, correct? He nodded, slightly confused. Yes, that's right. And her sister, the workaholic corporate type, who was supposedly too ill to attend the engagement party, her name is Myrtle Lawson, I continued. I believe so, yes, Richard said, his brow furrowing. Why do you? He stopped suddenly, his eyes widening as realization dawned. Wait, you can't be. I am Myrtle Lawson, I confirmed calmly, Amanda's sister. The one deemed too embarrassing to include in the celebration. Richard's face drained of color. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. I had no idea. Bradley never mentioned. Your last name is common enough not to make the connection, I finished for him. And clearly, neither Amanda nor my parents thought to mention that her supposedly embarrassing sister is actually a vice president at Meridian Enterprises, the same vice president conducting your performance review and evaluating your application for promotion. Richard was now visibly sweating. Myrtle, I can explain. I was just repeating what I'd heard. I had no idea you were. I held up a hand to stop him. This is awkward for both of us, Richard. But I want to assure you that my personal feelings about how my family has treated me will not influence my professional assessment of your work performance. That wouldn't be ethical. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. I appreciate your professionalism, and I want you to know that I had no role in the guest list decisions. That was between the women, my wife, your sister. I understand, I said, though I didn't entirely believe him based on his earlier comments. Now, let's focus on your quarterly review and promotion application. For the next 45 minutes, I walked Richard through my detailed assessment of his performance, highlighting both strengths and areas of concern. His face fell progressively as I outlined the inventory system delays, the turnover issues, and the pattern of taking credit for others' work. Based on these findings, I concluded, I cannot recommend you for the senior director position at this time. The role requires proven leadership skills, budget management excellence, and the ability to develop talent, all areas where your performance data shows room for improvement. This is very disappointing, Richard said stiffly, his earlier panic now replaced with barely concealed anger. I wonder if your personal feelings are influencing this decision more than you're admitting. I slid a folder across the desk. These are the objective metrics, Richard. I've documented everything thoroughly. You're welcome to review the data yourself. He glanced at the folder but didn't open it. What happens now? You'll remain in your current position with a standard annual increase, I explained. We'll create a development plan to address the areas of concern, and you can reapply for senior positions after demonstrating improvement. This isn't a rejection, Richard, it's a redirection. I see, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Is that all? For now, yes. We'll schedule a follow-up to discuss your development plan next week. Richard stood, his body language rigid with suppressed emotion. Bradley will be very disappointed about this outcome. He was counting on my promotion coinciding with their wedding plans. The implied threat wasn't subtle, but I refused to take the bait. Professional advancement is earned, not scheduled around personal milestones. I'm sure Bradley understands that. After Richard left, I sat back in my chair, emotionally drained but proud of how I'd handled the situation. I had been direct but fair. The decision was based on performance, not personal grievances, regardless of what Richard might believe. My momentary peace was shattered by my phone ringing. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. How could you? She demanded without preamble. Richard just called Bradley in a complete panic, saying you're his boss, and you denied his promotion. Hello to you too, Amanda, I replied calmly. I assume Richard shared the performance concerns I outlined? This is about the party, isn't it? She accused. You're punishing him because I didn't invite you. That's not true, I said firmly. Richard's performance issues are well documented. I made a fair professional assessment based on data. The fact that his son is engaged to my sister, the sister who told our family I was too embarrassing to include in her celebration, is an unfortunate coincidence. Amanda was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted from anger to panic. Do you have any idea what you've done? The Kellers are furious. Bradley says they're talking about scaling back wedding contributions, possibly even reconsidering the engagement if my family is going to cause problems for them professionally. That sounds like a very conditional kind of love, I observed. Is that really what you want, Amanda? People who only value you when things are going their way? You don't understand, she cried. This is my future we're talking about. No, you don't understand, I countered. I didn't share our connection with Richard until today's meeting. I've been nothing but professional throughout this process. If his performance warranted promotion, he would have received it, regardless of our personal connection. We need to fix this, Amanda insisted. Can you reconsider? Make an exception? There must be something you can do. I can't compromise my professional integrity, even for family, I said. Especially for family who's shown they don't actually respect me. After ending the call with a still distraught Amanda, I wasn't surprised when my parents called shortly after. The conversation followed predictable lines concern about Amanda's happiness, questions about whether I was being vindictive, pleas to find a solution that would appease the Kellers. We need to have a family meeting, my father finally said. Tonight. This situation has gotten out of hand. I agreed, if only to have everything out in the open at last. That evening, I arrived at my parents' house to find Amanda and Bradley already there, sitting stiffly on the living room sofa. My parents looked anxious, caught between their daughter's conflict and the potential fallout with their future in-laws. Thank you for coming, Myrtle, my mother began tentatively. We thought it was important for everyone to talk face to face. Where are Richard and his wife? I asked, noticing their absence. Dad thought it best to keep this just family for now, Amanda replied, gesturing to Bradley. Though Bradley wanted to be here to support me. Bradley nodded awkwardly in my direction. He was handsome in a conventional way, with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch peeking out from his shirt cuff. It's nice to finally meet you, Myrtle. I've heard about you. I'm sure you have, I replied, though apparently not that I'm a vice president at Meridian Enterprises. That detail was omitted, Bradley admitted, looking uncomfortable. Along with my invitation to your engagement party, I added. Amanda leaned forward. That's what this is about, isn't it? You're punishing Bradley's father because you're angry about the party. No, Amanda, I said firmly. Richard's performance issues are real and documented. I've been completely professional throughout this process. But you could make an exception, she insisted. People bend the rules for family all the time. That would be unethical, I replied, and it would undermine my professional credibility. What about your sister's happiness? My mother interjected. Doesn't that count for anything? The question struck me as particularly unfair. When has my happiness ever been a priority for this family? I asked quietly. When have any of you stood up for me the way you're all standing up for Richard Keller, a man you barely know? The room fell silent. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Myrtle, that's not fair, isn't it? I challenged. Amanda tells everyone I'm too embarrassing to include in her engagement party. You all agree to lie about me being sick, and now you expect me to compromise my professional ethics to fix a problem that isn't of my making? Bradley cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I never agreed with excluding you from the party. I told Amanda it was wrong. Amanda shot him a betrayed look. Bradley, it's true, he continued. I thought it was wrong to lie. And now that I know who you actually are, Myrtle, I'm honestly embarrassed that we handled it this way. My father talks about integrity all the time, but he wasn't truthful with you about the delays in his department. That's on him, not you. His unexpected support shifted the energy in the room. For the first time, Amanda looked uncertain rather than defensive. Is Richard really underperforming? She asked me directly. Yes, I said simply. I wouldn't deny anyone a promotion they'd earned, regardless of personal feelings. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I've made a terrible mistake, haven't I? It wasn't the full apology I deserved, but it was a start and acknowledgement that perhaps the embarrassing sister wasn't the actual problem in this scenario. As the night wore on, painful truths were spoken. My parents admitted they had enabled Amanda's behavior for years at my expense. Amanda acknowledged her shame had more to do with her own insecurities than anything I'd actually done. And Bradley revealed that his father's financial situation wasn't as solid as the family pretended. The promotion had been counted on to fund extravagant wedding plans designed to impress business associates rather than celebrate love. By the time we parted ways, nothing was fully resolved, but at least the lies had been exposed. And for the first time in years, I felt seen by my family not just as the successful daughter, but as a person worthy of respect. The week following our family confrontation was tense but transformative. Richard's promotion decision remained on hold, with the senior leadership committee reviewing my assessment and the supporting documentation. I had been meticulous in separating personal feelings from professional judgment, but perception mattered as much as reality in corporate politics. On Tuesday morning, I requested a meeting with my own supervisor, Janet Hargrove, the Executive Vice President of Operations. I need to disclose a potential conflict of interest, I explained, outlining the connection between Richard Keller and my sister. I've documented everything thoroughly, but given the personal connection, I wanted to be transparent. Janet listened carefully, then nodded. I appreciate your disclosure, Myrtle. It's an unusual situation, but your handling of it has been appropriate. I'll review the materials myself as an additional check. Thank you, I said, relieved to have the matter in the open. Janet studied me for a moment. Are you all right? This must be personally challenging. It was the kind of question I rarely received at work, where I'd cultivated a reputation for unflappable professionalism. The unexpected compassion caught me off guard. It's been difficult, I admitted. Family dynamics are complicated. Take care of yourself, Janet advised. Your work is excellent as always, but don't forget there's more to life than performance metrics. Coming from Janet, who was known for her relentless work ethic, the advice carried particular weight. Perhaps I needed to reevaluate some of my own priorities. Later that day, Richard requested a meeting. He arrived at my office looking markedly different from his usual confident self, humbled, even apologetic. "I've reviewed the performance data you provided," he began, "and after my initial reaction, I can see the validity of your concerns. The inventory system delays were more significant than I acknowledged, and the turnover issues deserve attention. I appreciate your willingness to look at the data objectively," I replied. "I also owe you an apology," he continued. "My comments about you not knowing who you were inappropriate and unprofessional. I repeated gossip without consideration, and that was wrong regardless of who you turned out to be." His apology seemed genuine, if perhaps motivated by self-preservation. I nodded in acknowledgement. "Where do we go from here?" he asked. "Professionally, I mean." "That depends on you," I replied honestly. "The development plan we discussed remains the path forward. Address the performance issues, demonstrate improvement, and future opportunities will be available. And personally, the wedding plans are, well, there's tension now between the families." "That's not a professional matter," I said firmly. "My sister and your son need to decide what's best for their relationship without corporate politics complicating things." Richard nodded slowly. "Fair enough. For what it's worth, I've told Bradley that his relationship with Amanda shouldn't be conditional on my career advancement. That's not the example I want to set for my son." It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd said to me, revealing a paternal concern that transcended corporate ambition. I found myself respecting him more for it. Meanwhile, Amanda had been uncharacteristically quiet, sending only a brief text asking if we could meet for coffee over the weekend. I agreed, curious about what she wanted to say without our parents or Bradley present. On Wednesday, a surprising visitor appeared at my office. Bradley Keller stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking much younger than he had at our family meeting. "Mr. Keller," I greeted him formally, "this is unexpected." "Please, call me Bradley," he said, taking a seat when I gestured. "I wanted to speak with you directly, without Amanda or my father involved." "All right," I said cautiously. "What can I do for you?" "First, I want to apologize for how you've been treated," he began. "The exclusion from our engagement party was wrong, and I should have stood up more firmly against it." "Thank you," I said, genuinely surprised by his directness. "Second, I want you to know that I love your sister very much," he continued. "This situation has been a wake-up call for both of us. Amanda has been so focused on impressing my family that she lost sight of what really matters." "And what does really matter, Bradley?" I asked. "Authenticity," he replied without hesitation. "Integrity. The qualities you've demonstrated throughout this mess. I admire how you've handled everything, and it's made me realize I need to be more like you and less like." He hesitated. "Less like your father?" I suggested gently. Bradley nodded. "Dad has always been obsessed with appearances and connections. It's exhausting, always trying to be the perfect Keller son. Amanda and I have been talking, and we're considering scaling back the wedding plans, something more meaningful and less performative." "Amanda agreed to that?" I asked, genuinely surprised. My sister had been planning her dream wedding since childhood. "It was her idea, actually," Bradley said with a small smile. "She said she wanted to start our marriage with honesty, not pretense, and she wants you involved in the planning, if you're willing." The conversation with Bradley left me thoughtful. People could surprise you, it seemed, if given the opportunity to rise to the occasion, rather than conform to expectations. By Friday, Janet had completed her review of Richard's performance assessment. "Your evaluation was fair and thoroughly documented," she confirmed. "I support your decision to delay his promotion pending improvement. However, I am concerned about the potential for perceived conflict given your family connection." "That's understandable," I acknowledged. "I recommend transferring Richard to another department for his development plan and future evaluations," Janet suggested. "It's cleaner for everyone involved and eliminates any question of bias, positive or negative." "I agree," I said. "That's the most ethical approach." The decision was both a professional courtesy to Richard and a personal relief to me. He would have the opportunity to improve and advance based on merit, without our family connection complicating matters. Saturday arrived, and with it my coffee meeting with Amanda. She was already seated when I arrived at the cafe, nervously shredding a napkin. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "We're still sisters," I replied simply. Amanda took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this week, about the kind of person I've become, the way I've treated you. It's not who I want to be." "Who do you want to be?" I asked. "Someone with integrity," she said, echoing Bradley's words from earlier in the week. "Someone who stands by family instead of hiding them away. Someone who values substance over appearance." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine directly. I'm truly sorry, Myrtle. What I did was cruel and shallow, and you deserved better from me. From all of us. The apology was what I'd been waiting for, but now that it had arrived, I realized forgiveness wasn't as simple as I'd imagined. It hurt, I said honestly. Not just being excluded from the party, but hearing you call me embarrassing. Knowing our parents agreed with you. I know, Amanda said, tears forming. I can't undo that. But I can promise to do better going forward. Bradley and I want you involved in our wedding planning, really involved, not just a token inclusion. Your business sense would actually be hugely helpful with budgeting and vendor negotiations. Is that an attempt to use my professional skills now that they're convenient? I asked, more curious than accusatory. Amanda winced. That came out wrong. What I meant was, I'm done pretending your success is something to be ashamed of. I'm proud of you, Myrtle. I've always been proud of you, even when I was acting otherwise. My insecurity about not measuring up to you is what drove a lot of my behavior. Her vulnerability was disarming. For the first time in years, I was seeing my sister without her social mask, just Amanda, flawed and human and trying to make amends. It's going to take time, I told her honestly. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I know, she nodded. I'm prepared to put in the work. We both are, Bradley too. We're restructuring our wedding plans to be more authentic and less about impressing people. His father isn't thrilled, but Bradley is standing firm. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering years of misunderstandings and hurt feelings. By the time we parted, nothing was fully resolved, but a path forward had emerged, one based on honesty rather than pretense. The following week brought closure on the professional front as well. Richard accepted the transfer to another department with surprising grace, acknowledging it was the appropriate solution given the circumstances. His development plan was established with clear metrics for improvement, and early indications suggested he was taking the feedback seriously. A family dinner was scheduled for Friday night, all the Lawsons plus Bradley, but not his parents. It was awkward at first, with my parents especially struggling to find the right balance between acknowledging past mistakes and moving forward. We failed you, Myrtle, my father finally said plainly. We prioritized Amanda's comfort over your feelings for years, and that was wrong. I hope you can forgive us eventually. We're so proud of everything you've accomplished, my mother added. I realize now we rarely told you that directly. We just assumed you knew. I didn't know, I said quietly. I thought you saw my career success as something that made me less feminine, less desirable as a daughter. My mother looked genuinely shocked. No, we've always been amazed by your achievements. We just didn't know how to relate to them sometimes. It seemed like you lived in a different world from us. Because you never tried to understand my world, I pointed out. You never visited my office or asked detailed questions about my work. It was always about Amanda's activities, Amanda's friends, Amanda's plans. Amanda winced but didn't contradict me. My parents exchanged pained looks, recognition dawning that their pattern of behavior had been more obvious and hurtful than they'd realized. We'd like to change that, my father said. If you'll give us the chance. I nodded slowly. I'd like that too. It wasn't an instant healing of all wounds, but it was a start in acknowledgement of past hurts and a commitment to doing better in the future. As we shared dessert later that evening, the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years, with everyone making a visible effort to include me in wedding discussions and show interest in my professional insights. When Bradley raised his glass in a toast, his words captured the essence of our collective journey. To family, not the perfect image we pretend to be, but the imperfect reality we actually are. May we always have the courage to choose authenticity over appearance, and the wisdom to value each other for who we truly are. I raised my glass with the others, feeling something I hadn't experienced with my family in a very long time, a sense of belonging just as I was, without having to hide or apologize for any part of myself. 3 months after the engagement party debacle, I found myself standing in Janet's office, reviewing Richard Keller's latest performance metrics. His work in the new department has been impressive, Janet noted, scrolling through the data. Significant improvement in project management, better team retention, and he's implemented a mentoring program for junior staff. That's good to hear, I said sincerely. Richard's response to criticism had ultimately revealed more character than his previous facade of perfection. The promotion committee is reconsidering his application for advancement, Janet continued. Not to the senior director position he originally wanted, but for a team lead role with potential for growth. Would you have any objection to that? I shook my head. None at all. It sounds appropriate based on his improved performance. Your handling of this situation has been exemplary, Myrtle, Janet said, closing the file. Navigating personal and professional boundaries isn't easy, especially with family involved. It required some difficult decisions, I acknowledged. The most difficult had been officially recusing myself from any involvement in Richard's evaluation once he transferred departments. It would have been easy and perhaps satisfying to maintain some influence over his career trajectory. But true integrity meant letting the professional process work independently, without my personal history affecting the outcome. Later that week, I received a text from Amanda. Wedding planning meeting Saturday at 10. Venue options to discuss. Your input really wanted. Brunch included. These planning sessions had become our new normal, a blend of practical organization and sisterly reconnection. Amanda had indeed scaled back her original extravagant vision, opting for something more intimate and meaningful. The guest list now included people who mattered to the couple, rather than those who might advance Bradley's career. Most surprisingly, Amanda had asked me to be her maid of honor, a role I'd never expected to fill, given our historically complicated relationship. My acceptance had been tentative at first, conditioned on continued honest communication between us. I don't want to be window dressing, I'd told her. If I'm standing beside you, it has to be because you truly want me there, not because you feel obligated after what happened. I want you there because you're my sister, Amanda had replied simply. And because I've realized that having someone who tells me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is more valuable than having someone who just tells me what I want to hear. Saturday's planning meeting went smoothly, with my practical suggestions about venue contracts actually appreciated rather than dismissed as too businesslike. Afterward, Amanda and I lingered over coffee. Bradley's dad got the promotion, she mentioned casually. Not the big one he originally wanted, but a step up. He seems pleased. That's good, I replied. His performance earned it. He's different now, Amanda observed. Less focused on appearances, more authentic. Bradley thinks your influence the whole situation really changed his perspective. The Kellers aren't coming to the cake tasting next week, by the way. We decided this part should just be family, my family. The significance of her statement wasn't lost on me. My sister was setting boundaries with her future in-laws, prioritizing our relationship in a way she never had before. I appreciate that, Amanda. She smiled slightly. I'm learning. Slowly, but I'm learning. The healing wasn't instantaneous or complete. There were still awkward moments at family gatherings, times when old patterns threatened to reemerge. My parents occasionally slipped into their habit of deferring to Amanda's preferences, though they caught themselves more quickly now. The wedding planning continued over the following months, with its inevitable stresses and conflicts. But unlike before, disagreements were addressed openly rather than smoothed over with lies or exclusion. When Richard and his wife were eventually included in some planning events, our interactions were cordial and professional. He never directly referenced the promotion situation again, though he did pull me aside at one dinner to say, the transfer was the best thing that could have happened to me. I needed that wake-up call. As for Bradley and Amanda, their relationship seemed strengthened rather than damaged by the family drama. I observed a new maturity in both of them, a willingness to stand up for their values, rather than simply going along with family expectations. Your sister has changed, Diana commented after meeting Amanda at a pre-wedding event. She actually asked me detailed questions about my work. The old Amanda would have changed the subject the moment business was mentioned. People can surprise you, I replied, watching Amanda across the room, genuinely engaged in conversation with my colleagues. The most profound change, however, was within me. The pain of being excluded and labeled embarrassing had forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about my own life. I had poured everything into my career, partly because professional achievement was the one area where I felt valued and respected. But in doing so, I'd neglected other aspects of myself: friendships, hobbies, personal growth outside the office. Janet's comment, "There's more to life than performance metrics," had resonated more deeply than I initially realized. I began setting actual boundaries at work, leaving the office by 6 most days, taking weekends completely off, and even planning a vacation, my first in 3 years. One evening, a month before Amanda's wedding, our parents hosted a small family dinner. As we sat around the table that had witnessed so many tense meals in the past, my father raised his glass. "To Myrtle," he said unexpectedly, "for showing us all what real strength and dignity look like. We didn't appreciate you properly for too long, and we're grateful for the chance to do better." My mother wiped away a tear. We are so proud of you, sweetheart, not just for your career success, but for who you are as a person. Amanda reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it gently. To my sister, who taught me what really matters. The moment wasn't perfect, no moment ever is. But it held something precious: acknowledgement, respect, and genuine love. Not for what I could do for them, or how I made them look to others, but simply for being myself. The journey from being the sister too embarrassing to include at an engagement party to being the maid of honor enthusiastically welcomed into every aspect of wedding planning hadn't been easy. It had required painful confrontations, raw honesty, and the courage to set boundaries while remaining open to reconciliation. As we finished dinner that night, I realized that the exclusion that had initially caused so much pain had ultimately led to greater inclusion not just in family events, but in the deeper sense of being seen and valued for my authentic self. The professional success I'd achieved was part of me, not something to be hidden away or apologized for, and my family was finally beginning to understand that. The freedom that came with this acceptance wasn't about winning or being right. It was about finding peace with who I was and establishing relationships based on mutual respect rather than pretense or obligation. It was about learning that standing up for myself didn't have to mean standing alone. In the end, what changed wasn't just how my family saw me, but how I saw myself not as the embarrassing sister or even the successful executive, but as Myrtle Lawson in my full, complex humanity, worthy of respect, not despite my differences but because of them. Have you ever had to stand up to family who underestimated you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, sometimes being excluded from where you don't belong leads you exactly where you need to be.